Lana and Max always sat on their usual seats, the only ones not occupied by their friends, in the middle of the lunchroom. Their table was a battlefield, littered with crumpled papers, spilled drinks, and half-eaten food. They glared at each other, their eyes locked in a perpetual standoff, daring the other to make the first move. Their rivalry was the stuff of legend, their arguments and pranks the talk of the school. Some even went as far as to call them frenemies. But Lana and Max knew better. They were enemies, and they loved every bitter moment of it. "So, Max, did you finally manage to finish that stupid book you've been reading?" Lana sneered, casually flipping her hair over her shoulder. "And what if I did?" Max retorted, folding his arms across his chest. "It was a really good book, not like you'd ever understand it anyway." "Oh, and why's that?" Lana drawled, arching an eyebrow. "Because you're an idiot," Max shot back. "And you're always late to class. Remember that time you showed up to the math quiz with your skirt on backwards?" Lana's cheeks flushed red as she glared at him. "At least I'm not a total loser like you, Max. Everyone knows you'll never amount to anything." Their exchange was interrupted by one of their friends who giggled and nudged Lana. "Oh my God, you guys are so cute when you fight," she exclaimed, her voice filled with false sincerity. Both Lana and Max turned to look at her in disbelief. "What?" they both said in unison. "We are not!" They glanced at each other, a look of mutual understanding passing between them. "Oh, come on," their friend persisted. "You two are totally meant for each other. You should just admit it and give in to your feelings already." Lana and Max exchanged another disgusted look, refusing to be cut or let anyone call them a couple. But deep down, they knew the truth. They were enemies, but they couldn't help but enjoy the way their rivalry made their hearts race and their palms sweat. And sometimes they even found themselves wondering what it would be like to not hate each other so much. As the rest of their friends began to fill the lunchroom, the tension between Lana and Max seemed to grow stronger. They continued to argue and pull pranks on each other, but there was an underlying current of something else beneath the surface. They couldn't help but feel drawn to each other, even when they were trying their hardest to resist. The principal, Mr. Johnson, had had enough of their antics and called them into his office yet again. As they walked down the hall, Lana nudged Max and whispered, "This is all your fault, you know." He shot her a sideways glance before they both burst out laughing. In the principal's office, they took their seats across from him, trying to maintain their cool demeanors. "Lana, Max," he sighed, "what exactly is going on between you two?" He looked at them expectantly, but neither one was about to reveal the truth. "It's all just a misunderstanding, Mr. Johnson," Lana lied, batting her eyelashes. "We were just arguing over a textbook in the library and things got a little out of hand." Max nodded in agreement, his expression carefully neutral. "Yeah, that's right. We were just having a friendly argument." He shot her a sideways glance, their shared history of animosity clear even in the briefest of moments. The principal sighed, rubbing his eyes wearily. "I wish I could believe that. But I've seen the two of you together far too many times. You're always fighting, and I'm beginning to think that maybe there's more to it than just simple rivalry." Lana leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "What do you mean by that, Mr. Johnson?" she asked defensively. "Well," he began, "it's almost as if you two enjoy each other's company." He paused, searching their expressions for some sign of understanding. "Am I wrong?" Both Lana and Max looked at each other, their faces flushing with an unexpected heat. There was a brief moment of silence, during which they seemed to be fighting an internal battle. Finally, Max cleared his throat and said, "No, sir, you're wrong." Lana nodded in agreement, her cheeks burning. The principal raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "Are you sure about that?" he asked, his voice laced with skepticism. Because I've seen the way you two look at each other in class, and it's not the same as how you look at other people. It's intense. Lana shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her heart racing as she met Max's eyes. There was a brief flicker of something in his gaze before he looked away, avoiding her stare. The principal waited, watching them both carefully, as if he could see right through their attempts at denial. "Look," Max finally said, his voice sounding more defensive than he intended. "It's just, we're always competing, you know. We can't help but get under each other's skin. That's all." He glanced at Lana again, and she offered him a small, reassuring smile. The principal studied their faces, for a moment longer before sighing and leaning back in his chair. "I see," he said, sounding unconvinced. "Well, if you're sure there's nothing else going on, I'll let it go this time. But I want the two of you to think about why you're always fighting, and I would like you both to bring your parents to school, for this matter. The pranks and both of your arguments have gone too far." Lana nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and unease. Max, on the other hand, looked less than pleased. "Yeah, okay," he muttered. "Whatever you say, Mr. Johnson." Outside the principal's office, they stood in the hallway, avoiding each other's gaze. The atmosphere between them was thick with tension, and they could feel the weight of their lies pressing down on them. "I can't believe we have to drag our parents into this," Lana sighed. "It's going to be a long night." "Yeah, you think your dad's going to understand?" Max asked, his tone laced with bitterness. "He's probably going to ground me for life." "Well, my mom's not going to be any easier on me," Lana replied, running a hand through her hair. "She's always been so protective." The rest of the day dragged on, with both of them dreading the inevitable confrontation with their parents. Finally, they arrived at their respective homes. Max's house was the typical suburban nightmare, with a well-manicured lawn and a two-car garage. His father, a successful businessman, was already waiting for them in the living room. He was a tall, imposing figure with an air of authority that seemed to command respect even from Max. Lana's house was a quaint old Victorian with a lush garden out back. Her mother, a talented artist, was sitting at the kitchen table when they walked in. She looked up from her painting and smiled warmly at them, her eyes filled with concern. "Hi, sweetie," she said to Lana, her voice gentle and reassuring. "Your father will be home soon. I hope you didn't get into too much trouble today." Lana glanced at her mom, feeling a lump forming in her throat. "It's complicated," she managed to say. "The principal called us in because of some pranks we played on each other." Her mother's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. "Pranks? You two have always been such good friends. I didn't think you had it in you to play tricks on each other." Little did Lana's mother know that they were enemies, that two big enemies. "Well, I suppose there's more to it than what you're saying," she said, her voice softening. "Why don't you tell me what really happened?" Lana took a deep breath and started to explain the situation. From the day they'd met in kindergarten to the present day, the rivalry, the fights, and the pranks. Her mother listened intently, her expression shifting from surprise to understanding to concern as the story unfolded. "I had no idea it had gotten this bad," she said when Lana had finished. "I'm so sorry, sweetie. I wish I could have done something to help." Lana felt a wave of empathy wash over her as she realized that her mother wasn't angry or disappointed in her. She was just hurting for her daughter. "Well," Max began, clearing his throat as he walked into the room. His father looked up from his paperwork and gave him a cool, appraising glance. "It's not just me, Dad. Lana and I have been fighting for years now." He hesitated for a moment, unsure how to continue. "The principal wants us both to bring our parents in tomorrow to talk about it." His father's eyebrows raised in surprise. "Is that so?" he said calmly. "Well, I'm sure we can discuss this like adults. Why don't you tell me what happened?" Max took a deep breath, and began to recount the events leading up to the principal's summons, starting with the note in his locker and working his way through the pranks and fights they'd had over the years. As he spoke, his father's expression remained impassive, but there was a glint in his eye that suggested he was taking it all in. When Max had finished, his father leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "I see," he said slowly. "And how do you think we should handle this situation, Max?" Max shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I don't know, Dad. I just want it all to stop." His father studied him for a moment, looked over to the window. The afternoon sun streamed through the glass, casting a warm glow across the room. "You know, Max," he said thoughtfully, "maybe there's more to this than just the rivalry with Lana. Maybe it's about finding a purpose, something that motivates you outside of this endless competition." Max raised an eyebrow, unsure where his father was going with this. "Have you ever considered that maybe you like her?" his father asked, a twinkle in his eye. The question caught Max off guard. He hadn't then considered the possibility, but now that it was out there, he couldn't help but feel a strange mixture of confusion and excitement. He glanced at his father, trying to gauge his sincerity. I don't know, Dad. She's always been my rival. It's just never been like that." His father smiled knowingly. "Well, maybe it's time you took a step back and looked at the bigger picture. Maybe this rivalry has been holding you both back from exploring other possibilities, from finding out who you really are." He paused, considering his words carefully. "You could try talking to her about it, you know? Maybe you could work together to find some common ground. You never know what might happen." Max felt a mixture of anticipation and apprehension welling up inside him. He knew his father was right. There was more to it than just the rivalry, but the thought of actually admitting his feelings to Lana was terrifying. Still, he knew he couldn't ignore this anymore. "You're right, Dad," Max said, meeting his father's gaze. "I'll talk to her." His father nodded, a proud smile spreading across his face. The next day, Max sat across from Lana and their parents at the principal's office. He took a deep breath and began to speak. "I wanted to apologize for everything that's been going on between us. I know it's been a mess, and I know we've both done things we shouldn't have." He glanced at Lana, her expression unreadable. Once they were out of the principal's office, their parents were sat in their cars waiting for them. Max Fatter sat in his car while Lana's mother in hers. Before Lana could go to her mother, Max called out to her, making her halt on her steps. "Lana, I need to talk to you." Lana turned to him and spoke. "What is it?" "I think maybe there's more to it than just rivalry," he continued, feeling his father's words echoing in his head. "I've been thinking that maybe we like each other, and that this whole thing has just been a way for us to avoid admitting it." There was a long pause as the words hung in the air. Stunned silence filled the air as Max's words hung between them. Lana's expression shifted from surprise to confusion and then to anger. "You're wrong," she spat, turning away from him. "This is all just a big misunderstanding." Their parents exchanged worried glances. In between, only Lana knew she was lying. Max's heart sank. He took a step closer to her, his voice quiet but determined. "Lana, I've thought about this a lot, and I really believe that I'm right. Maybe we should give ourselves a chance to explore what's really going on between us, instead of fighting all the time." Lana hesitated, her shoulders slumping slightly. "I don't know, Max," she said softly. "I mean, we've been enemies for so long. I don't want to ruin our relationship if this is all just a mistake." Max reached out to take her hand, and for a moment they stood there, their fingers intertwined. "I understand that," he said, meeting her gaze. "But if we never try, we'll never know. And I don't want to look back on this and wonder what could have been." Lana looked deep into his eyes, searching for any sign of deception, but all she saw was honesty and courage. Slowly, she nodded. Okay, she whispered. I'll give it a chance. With you. Her words sent a surge of relief and excitement through Max. He leaned forward, pressing a gentle kiss to her hand. Thank you, Lana, he murmured, before stepping back to allow her some space. Their parents exchanged relieved looks and smiled encouragingly at the two of them. Max's father smiled warmly, feeling a sense of pride wash over him. He had done everything he could to bring his son and Lana together, and it seemed to be working. As they walked back to the school, Max and Lana held hands, their fingers intertwined, a newfound sense of understanding and companionship growing between them. The rest of the day passed in a blur of conversations and shared glances. They found themselves drawn to each other, exploring their feelings and trying to make sense of this unexpected turn of events. They talked about their families, their friends, their hopes and dreams, and even about the rivalry that had defined their relationship for so long. As they parted ways at the end of the day, they exchanged shy smiles and promises to talk more tomorrow. Max walked home with a new spring in his step, his heart filled with hope and anticipation. He couldn't wait to see Lana again and continue their newfound connection. The next day at school, Max and Lana found excuses to sit together at lunch and study together during class. Their conversations became more intimate and revealing, as they shared secrets and fears they had never revealed to anyone else. Their relationship deepened, and it was clear that their feelings for each other were genuine and growing stronger with each passing moment. As they walked together down the hallway, Max playfully mussed Lana's hair, making her laugh. "You know," she said, looking up at him with a smile, "you're really starting to get on my nerves, in a good way." He grinned, leaning in to brush a strand of hair from her face. "Oh, really? And what about this, he teased, moving even closer, his breath tickling her ear. Her heart raced as she felt the warmth of his body against hers, and she couldn't help but close her eyes for a moment, savoring the sensation. "Max," she whispered, her voice soft and husky. "You're killing me here." He paused, taking a deep breath before whispering back, "I could say the same thing about you, Lana." Their voices were barely audible above the din of the hallway, but it was clear to everyone around them that something special was happening between them. The air seemed to crackle with electricity as they stood there, their faces just inches apart, lost in each other's eyes. Max leaned in closer still, his lips brushing against hers in a gentle, tentative kiss. Lana sighed softly, her hands finding their way up to his shoulders, and she pressed herself against him, returning the kiss with equal passion. The sounds of the school faded away, replaced by the sound of their hearts pounding in their chests and the soft rustling of their clothes as they moved against each other. Time seemed to stand still as they lost themselves in the moment. Just like that, their love continued, and they cherished every time with each other. Their love filled with teasings and slow-burn romance, pulling them more close to each other, and their love just grew more each passing day.